How do we reduce down payments and closing costs? Number one, the really easy one is if you guys are doing a conventional deal, one of the underrated things that you should negotiate is massive seller credit with the seller. So psychologically, what most sellers, and the listing agents know this, what most sellers are married to is a very specific purchase price. Everybody's married to a very specific number about what their home is worth. And every time they need to drop the purchase price or they get lowballed on offers, they get very upset. So what we'll always tell people is we are very happy to give you the asking price that you are looking for. Obviously, we know the home is going to be subject to appraisal, so we need to get the appraisal. We're not going to pay over the appraised value. So if the appraisal comes back and indicates that it's worth less than this, we're coming down. But what we really need is we'll give you fair market value for your home. We're not going to lowball you. But what we need is a $35,000, $25,000, or $15,000 seller credit, because what we're going to do once we close on this home is we need to actually have the budget to put in the funds to enhance and improve the property post-close. And, with the amount that we're putting down and then these closing costs, it's really going to eat into our budget. This is the only way that we can make the deal work. So Brian on my team, who reaches out to the sellers, has that conversation with either the seller or the listing agent or both of them. And they'll be very, very willing to accept an offer like that because it feels like they're winning on the purchase price, but in reality, they're still giving us money back at close. And that's what a seller credit is. So that's one way of reducing closing costs for conventional deals. Another way of reducing closing costs, and this is how we typically help save clients $60,000 to $180,000, is negotiating creative financing. So subject to financing is an example of people who bought their homes recently with low money down payments. They have low equity in that home that they own, and they have very low interest rates, especially if the home was purchased in 2020, 21, or 2022. So we'll give them a fair market value, or maybe even slightly over fair market value offer price of their home in exchange for a very low down payment. I'm talking as low as 4.5% to 12.5%, 13% down, plus very low closing costs because there's no new lender involved, because we're just taking over the responsibilities of making the payments on their existing debt, which has really, really low interest rates and therefore really low monthly payments. Probably the ultimate best, if you think of a blend of all the benefits that you get, that is probably the most ideal scenario for creative financing. So low down payment, crazy low down payment, very low, almost non-existent closing costs, and then super low or lower interest rates and therefore lower monthly payments. So you get the reverse offset method where you're buying a property for a high purchase price or a purchase price that it's worth or close to what it's worth, low total entry into the deal, and then it's 1-to-1 ratio of the net effective tax savings so that you have the funds left over to deploy into revenue driving enhancements post-close. Another example of creative finance that really helps us drive down the down payment and the closing costs, again, to save clients on average $60,000 to $180,000 across the down payment and closing costs, is some element of seller financing. These are typically homes that are owned by sellers for more than 5, 10, 15 plus years, and they have higher equity positions in the home. So probably more than 30 to 40% equity position. So $1 million home, for example, that they have a $350,000 equity position in. Well, we would say to them, hey, we're not going to put 35% or $350,000 out of $1 million down on this home today. What we would happily do is we'll put 120, 150, 12 to 15% down, and then seller finance that remainder 200, 230,000 over a 30-year period, and then maybe a 10 or 7 or a 5-year balloon. So this way, again, we might buy it at fair market value or slightly higher than fair market value. That's the one give and take trade-off that we might need to give to the seller in order to make the deal work. But we win massively on the down payment, the crazy low closing costs, and then typically much lower monthly payments, which help us cash flow and stay cash flowing for a very long period of time.